Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Mel. I'm with Medcurity, the marketing director here, and I'm here with Molly Miller.
Hi, I'm Molly Miller. I am partner manager at Medcurity.
So thanks for joining. Just a few housekeeping things. We will have a Q&A at the end, but you're always welcome to put your questions either in the chat, which we'll see also, or in the Q&A box there, that option. And then we'll just get started. So I'm going to start off first talking about just the data environment in the world that we live in. I'm going to focus on, because we are focused on risk and compliance and security and privacy. I'm going to talk a lot about the areas where things like there could be hidden data leaks that you're not aware of, or the privacy or the security risks that come with the large digital footprints that you have whenever we have smart devices and tech and everything like that. So I just want to point out from the beginning that there is a lot of great reasons why companies will use data and collect information. There's a lot of valuable things to do with it, like that are not bad. So like the pharmaceutical companies and research companies, they can help use data to come up with cures and things like that. And then fraud prevention is very important, of course. Banks will use data to see if there's been fraudulent activity on accounts. So of course, there's great reasons to use and collect data. But that's not always the case. So here's a few headlines from different companies. Data Axle is a broker. This kind of just is a little snapshot of the world that we live in. There is a lot of value in data, of course, and brokers make a lot of money off of it. Surprisingly, some of the top data broker companies in the US are actually the credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. As you know, it's really important to have a good credit score so that you can, take out loans and things like that. And then it's interesting that if Experian is sharing and selling people's information, that puts them at risk for things like identity theft and fraud. But one thing that you can do, which I would say that everyone should do this, including for your children, is freezing your credit, which you'd have to reach out to Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion directly. But if you go to their websites, which I have a link to them at the end of the slide deck, and you freeze your credit, that significantly reduces your risk of identity theft. And it's become more and more prevalent as time goes on. So here are just some of the categories of data collected. Your unique device IDs, income level, inferred health issues, voter registration. So basically, a lot of information can be collected from public records, and then through apps that you have on your phone or your tablets and things like that. So basically, over time, there's enough information that's been collected that can be compiled to create very detailed profiles on people. And of course, the more data and information that's going through different devices and apps, that increases the size of your digital footprint, which makes it easier for threat actors to find you. Here are more specific examples of where they collect your information. Website browsing history, of course, social media profiles, mobile apps, phone directories, of course, surveys. And that's one of the things that one wouldn't think is a data harvesting or information harvesting scheme would be like those sweepstakes that you see if you go to the grocery store or something and say, you can win a boat, here, put in your information. Who knows who actually wins a boat, or if anyone does, but they do create those actually for the purposes of collecting your information. Same with the rewards programs. You go to Safeway or Vons and you enter in your club card phone number. A lot of times people will fill out the application to get those club cards, they're free, but they'll put in their name, address, phone number, and every time you go to the store and enter that, then your purchase history, your credit card info, all of that is tracking every detail, and then inferences can be made about you. And it's, of course, there's some positive things that come out of it also. So I don't want to say that it's all bad, but that's just something to be aware of. And one of the things that you can do whenever if you were to sign up for a new club card or something, you don't have to give your real information. So, just come up with a phone number and just remember it, and you can use that every time. And it doesn't have to be your real phone number. They're not going to deny you a Vons card because you put a fake name and number. And so, since many of you or most of you are in healthcare, I just wanted to share a little bit about the health data uses. So a lot of people will have, say like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or something like that. And what a lot of people don't realize is that those are not, that their information is not protected by HIPAA for those things. So if you enter in, say, in your iPhone in the health app, that's part of or one of the ones that was pre-installed when you got it. If you put your health information in there, Apple's not obligated to keep that private because they're not a HIPAA covered entity. So they can do what they want with it. They can say that they're not going to share it, but and we hope that they don't, but they are not obliged to protect it like a healthcare provider would be with under HIPAA. All right, so if you've heard of like personalized advertising and things like that, the data brokers will create detailed profiles on everyone and then sell information to ad companies and whoever wants to buy it, and segment people based on things like it says like frequently eat frozen dinners. Well, that would be something that was inferred based on your purchase history. And same with things like, oh, they're likely smokers. And so if you think about how this can impact your life. So for instance, if your data says that you're likely a smoker and your purchase history shows you buy a lot of cigarettes, and then you apply for life insurance and the life insurance company asks you, hey, do you smoke cigarettes, and you have a different rate based on that, you could say that you don't, but if they were to purchase lists, and they can find out that you're lying just because that information's out there and can be purchased from these brokers. Just the data is being used more and more for different things. As you can see, here's a little visual. These are all the different, or a variety of categories that Axiom is tracking. And it says that they have up to 3,000 attributes and scores for 700 million people. That's a lot of information. And, it's of course it's useful and good for many things, but at the same time, the general public does not have awareness or knowledge of what inferences are being made about them. So like if you were to reach out to a company that you've given your information to, like say Facebook, they're not going to give you a detailed breakdown of what inferences are made about you. They'll just tell you, oh, we've collected your name, phone number, X, you name it, but they're not going to tell you the detailed profiles and inferences. Just a little snapshot of kind of where we're at today with the proliferation of the smart devices and ad tech. So these are a few recent headlines. There's a restaurant or an app that restaurants use called Open Table, and there was recently an article or people were discovering that the restaurants were able to see pretty detailed information about the people, and then also make decisions based on what the apps were telling them. So they could say, this person is often late to the reservation, or this person cancels frequently, or this person doesn't buy very much whenever they come in. And that can impact, it seems like a small thing, and maybe it's not a huge deal to you, but that can be applied to other industries. So basically, if based on the information that they have about you, like, oh, they're always late, they don't spend much money, it'll be a lot increasingly more difficult to get a reservation. That's just like a silly example, but if you think about how that applies to other things. Um, there also Samsung, if you think of smart fridges and everything that has a screen on it, who knows if in the future there'll be advertisements on all of them, on every screen that you see, um, which is a kind of interesting. So that's just kind of the world that we live in, and we'll see how things go going forward. So Data Axle is one of the biggest brokers. Um, it's, sorry, one second. Um, so basically, they'll call themselves like a marketing services provider or data tech company, but their core business model revolves around collection, aggregation, and sale of personal and professional information. So they have databases on over 250 million consumers and 15 million businesses. And basically, they gather information from sources like utility connections, real estate records, voter registrations, and public directories. And essentially, one of their key selling points is that they're able to link your professional identity to your personal life. And then they sell that information to marketers, insurance companies, government agencies. And then they do provide services that to other companies to de-anonymize visitors, so that, I mean, you can kind of imagine what that's for. So anyway, so here's a few examples. Actually went on the Data Axle website just to kind of see what kind of information you could download and buy. And these are some of them, some of the inferences or ways that they're profiling people, like high likelihood of drinking wine weekly, people who are likely to seek adventure and risk. So if you imagine you're a life insurance company and you're trying to decide whether or not you want to cover someone or what you want to charge them, you would probably want to purchase a list like that, and then basically make a decision about somebody based on that. And the unfortunate thing is, the individual person doesn't know what is being inferred about them. And that's kind of one reason why, we want to be careful about our digital footprint. So bringing it back to healthcare and health is that a lot of people are using different health apps. Like there's one that was called Flow that was managing like menstrual cycles. There was an app called GoodRx that was for like prescription coupons for prescriptions. And essentially both of them had actually gotten in hot water with the FTC because they said that they weren't sharing that information, and they're keeping it private. But it turns out both those companies were actually sharing that information with Google, Facebook, YouTube, and other big tech companies. And of course, you can imagine people weren't too happy about that. But the other things related to health apps and just apps in general is that many of them don't have great security. And a lot of them are built with software developer kits that have like affiliate marketing and things like that, where the developer or the end user doesn't actually know that their information is being tracked and sold to advertising companies and things like that. So, of course, they're not covered by HIPAA. So if you have the Flow app, they don't have to follow the same privacy practices or security practices. So that's a lot of consumers don't know that. And then of course the apps are sharing data with the advertisers or other third parties without the user knowing, or everyone gets little pop-up of here's our privacy practices, do you opt in or out? And you get that pop-up so often, it's easy to just click and accidentally accept and not realize what it's actually what they're actually going to track. And then of course we have the IoT devices, the Apple Watches, the Fitbits, and things like that. And one thing to keep in mind is that all of the devices that you have, you could have a smart fridge, a Roomba, they're all, if they're connecting to your Wi-Fi, then they could potentially create like a pathway into your other devices and things that are connected to it. So, for instance, there was a huge breach or cyber attack with a casino in Nevada because of a smart thermometer in a fish tank uh, had outdated or needed a software update of some kind or firmware update, and basically that's how the threat actors got into the casino and ended up stealing a bunch of money. Of course, um, you know, if the devices are compromised, it could impact patient care, uh, which is obviously one of the most severe problems there. All right, so in general, the legal landscape and challenges beyond HIPAA is that the wellness programs, health apps, and brokers are not covered entities. And basically, on the state level, the state, many of the states have new privacy laws, or maybe there's some that are pending, but there's such a variation from state to state, so it's really hard to really know how, it's difficult for many organizations to actually comply with them because they're always changing. I know California's had a lot of recent changes or proposed changes, and Washington recently launched the My Health, My Data Act, attempting to fill in the gaps with the health apps and things like that. But of course, with each of the different state laws, there's some gaps or differences and who's exempt from that. Um, and so there's some things you can do. These are very simple. Um, just if you for your phone, your iPad, to kind of reduce the oversharing is to do your due diligence before you're downloading any apps. Like the average person in the US has 80 apps, and a lot of them will have vulnerabilities, and or if it's free, then there's a reason why it's free. Perhaps they're selling your data. And so I would suggest only downloading the apps that you actually really need and use, and just going through your phone and making sure that whatever ones you have installed are updated, and just removing any that you actually don't need or use. Like for me personally, I have maybe 3 apps on my phone. I'm definitely an anomaly in that way, but I do actually, if I want to use, say, Instagram, I'll reinstall it. It takes 2 seconds, and then it actually my phone will still remember the password. And so every time I'm done using it, I'll just delete it, which I hardly ever use it anyway. So, but that's something that to keep in mind. If there's an app that you occasionally use, you can easily remove it and then reinstall it whenever you're actually ready to use it again. And one of the things too to think about is a lot of the apps will actually have you opted in or saying yes to everything. So if they want your location information, your camera and mic access and your contacts, they're all kind of defaulting to yes. So unless you go into your app settings and change that, you're sharing a huge amount of information with the 80 apps on your phone. So one of the things, like I would say Venmo as an example, or the social media apps, they'll ask, oh, can we access your contacts and bring them over to this app and make your life easier? Uh, well, now Venmo has everyone's information that is in your contact list. That could be children, it could be, I don't know if any of you would contact patients necessarily through your phone, but essentially there's some risk there. And if you think about privacy and like the vulnerabilities that come when your digital footprint's bigger, whenever everyone's giving access to apps to all of your contacts, that makes those people also more susceptible to like phishing attacks and things like that. So I would say to go into every app and limit the camera and mic access or block it. For the most part, none of them would need camera or mic access unless it's Zoom meeting app or sorry, not Spotify. Um, like say Teams, those video conferencing apps, and you can always limit it so that it's only when you're using the app, not all the time. So that's another thing to be careful of. And then I would limit or block location tracking for all the apps. And for when you're actually using your GPS, you can turn it on while you're actually traveling somewhere and then turn it off because your location data actually reveals it could reveal just about anything from you. If you think about, okay, you have your location tracking on and all of your apps have access to it, and you're driving to the doctor's office. Okay, it's an oncologist. Now all those apps know that you're going to the oncologist, and then they can make inferences about that based on that. Or um, say you're stopping at the liquor store every other day, the apps will all know that. So it's just like, just that's one of those little things that's easy to toggle off and just it will limit a lot of that. Um, and then I would say to review your app permissions often. I've noticed for myself, if Microsoft say installs an update, they've actually a lot of times they'll actually change my settings. So uh, one of the more recent updates, I had toggled off Microsoft Recall, which I would definitely suggest looking on your personal computers and your work computers and making sure that that is turned off because essentially what it is um, it takes a screenshot of your whatever you're looking at every 5 minutes and uploads it to the Microsoft Cloud. So I don't really I don't imagine anyone who finds that useful for themselves, but obviously that kind of can open the door to some privacy and security risks. They do say that they don't share that information or they will filter out sensitive information, but it doesn't hurt to be on stay cautious or be on the cautious side. And then whenever you're looking through your apps, only say yes to the settings that are actually absolutely essential for them in order to like function to do their job essentially. So, if your calculator app is asking for your location, access to your contacts, I mean, that's pretty ridiculous. But surprisingly, like weather apps and things like that are notorious for asking for excessive permissions. Um, all right. So when you think of how all the data is pulled from all these different sources and even your information, like you put in your date of birth, phone number, um, it's easy to combine multiple sources. Like if you think of a company uh, like the telecom companies, they have a lot of subsidiaries and affiliates. They can kind of bring all that information together. So even if it's originally you were not thinking that you were in private browsing mode or something, there's still other ways to bring all that information together. And that does actually happen. The brokers actually do that. And basically the data points are combined to create unique profiles and the information can be cross-referenced. And if you think of like the 2,000 data points that they have on each person, that's where those inferences come from. And there's nothing stopping for actors from going and buying the same information. So say if I wanted to uh, reach out or like do cyber attacks on healthcare organizations in the US, I could simply go and buy these lists from these brokers and be able to target or do phishing attacks on people with detailed information about them, which makes it easier. And here's kind of a little infographic of kind of what I'm talking about. Like 80% of US email addresses are on file at this towered FTA. And then 38% of employed Americans' pay stubs information is available in Equifax. That's pretty wild. 3,000 data points per person. So if you just think about how all of that has this impact, like the bigger your digital footprint is, the easier you are to, or the easier you are to target, I guess you could say. All right. And here's some examples of how the exposure of your information can impact your workplace and personal security. So, of course, the more your information's out there, it's easier for attackers to do spear phishing attacks, and then say like they can get the employee names and things like that. So if you're sharing your contact list and a bunch of your colleagues are in there, well, that's out there now, out in cyberspace, and the threat actors can get that, and it makes it a lot easier. Um, and then, of course, the business email compromise is a big one in healthcare and in general. Uh, and then, of course, they can have like they can tailor the messages very easily now, more than ever, with the AI tools and the proliferation of information about each person that's available online. Of course, the really scary stuff is the doxing and harassment, and thinking of people who are experiencing domestic violence or something, they're trying to get away. Now with all the technology, it's uh, a lot easier for um, you know, attackers to or bad people to go and find the person that they're targeting and stalk. All right. So here's an example. This actually I discovered this yesterday. So one recommendation I have for everyone is to regularly, look up Google your first name, your last name, and the city that you currently live in and see what comes up in the results. Um, you might be surprised to find out that will have your entire address, phone number, who your friends are, your family members. So just on a routine, like maybe once a quarter or something, just look up your first name, last name, city, and then cities that you have lived in the past, and then just do a couple different variations of it and see what pulls up. So yesterday, I actually found out that this scam website it looks like it was AI generated. I put someone else's photo and put Jane Doe because I was going to share this deck with everyone afterwards. And, I didn't want my face out there. And this is actually a scam site. So if somebody were to receive this deck later, I wouldn't want them to think that I'm associated with this company or anything. So anyway, now with the AI tools, it's so easy to make fake websites. They can be made in minutes. I've tinkered around with them myself. And so yesterday, when I was looking at my own name on different Google searches, I found out that this fake company actually had me listed as a member of their team on their employee page. And this is the fake little bio that they wrote about me. And there's a quote that I said, and I didn't know this existed until I went online and did a little research on myself. And so, it's pretty scary because I wouldn't want, I mean, this to be associated with a website that's actually trying to scam people. And then people think I'm scamming, and who knows? Just take the time, it's really quick and easy. And I would actually even look up, your kids and things like that too, just for safety reasons. And there's actually things you can do to have yourself removed from the search engine results pages. I can share those resources. You can just contact or go through Google directly and say that you don't to have you removed from their search results pages. But I would suggest before doing that is making note of the different people search sites that do actually have you listed, because you would want to remove yourself from those as well. And there are services that you can uh, pay for, just kind of like the same thing as like identity theft monitoring or credit monitoring, like those kinds of services. Not all of them are great, so you want to kind of take the time to kind of research them. And I'll have a list of a few different resources and things that you can explore. But there is a possibility of removing yourself from the Google searches, at least your address and those profiles from that people search sites, which is a good idea too, because of course, if you're a threat actor and you want to target certain people, it's really easy just to type in the name of a healthcare executive and then put in the people search, or like look up the people search sites, and then you can come up with a really personalized phishing message, or know who to reach out to or who their contacts are, and kind of go around to find them that way. So this is a recent Senate bill from last month. So this actually was designed to basically expand the health privacy protections to account for the new technologies that aren't currently required to have privacy protections like the smartwatches and health apps. So basically, this is an attempt to apply protections that HIPAA has to those health apps and things like that. Um, so basically, the health apps, they would have to get permission and disclose that if they are going to provide that information to third parties, they would need to get that person's permission. And then implementing a no re-identification clause, which these days you have like the 18 safe harbor. Um, Basically, you remove those 18 and then from PHI, and then it's supposedly you're hiding that person's identity and it can be shared. It's no longer covered in HIPAA. But the thing is, with the tools that we have in today's world, it's actually possible to re-identify people, and it's not that difficult actually. So this is just going forward. I would keep an eye on this and see if it changes things, because it actually could impact healthcare providers as well. Because if you'd have to change your privacy policies or add some information to your patient notices and things like that. So here's a couple basics. Just general privacy security is using multi-factor authentication. And of course, creating complex passwords and not reusing them. So if say for instance, your email was part of in a breach, a lot of times people will reuse their passwords. So if they know your email address and the password for one thing, they can just test it for a lot of different accounts or platforms and things like that. And uh, it's it's really important to do that. So, and then of course not logging into public Wi-Fi, and then forgetting the networks you don't use, and then routinely checking your privacy settings. And I do this often, and I can tell you almost every time I take a minute to go through them, I find a new menu that was hidden within a menu within another menu that was sharing my information or sending my photos or using AI or training their AI with my content. Just, it's pretty wild. So I would do that routinely, and then always just delete the unimportant apps, because those are a big risk, or can be compromise your information. Oh, and I would say to always every day turn your phone off and like let it sit for a few minutes and turn it back on again. Same with your iPads. It's just a good practice for security. And then not using public Wi-Fi. You can use your hotspot or your VPN. That's a lot safer. And then, for instance, like in the airports, my sister actually this year, I found out she had gone on 2 different trips, and she told me each time that her credit card was hacked, and she didn't realize that it was from the airport. And when she contacted the bank to, close that account or get a new credit card, they told her that essentially, and this is true, like there's technology that's you can buy online that you can go to an airport and steal someone's credit card. You stand next to them when they're about to pay or paying, and they can take your number that way. And I think that's what happened to her. And your passport, your driver's license, all of those those are also readable. Another good thing to do is to turn off your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on your phone when you're not using them. I mean, it drains your battery, but then your phone is always looking out for other devices to connect to, and then your device also pops up. Like if you're saying, like you have your hotspot at the airport and you don't have it hidden, or you're saying like, oh, I'm willing to share this, and people will also see that too. So that's something to keep in mind. Oops. All right. Sorry, I'm going too fast here. The other thing what we offer is a network vulnerability assessment, and I'll let Molly share a little bit about that and tell you how it can protect you.
Thank you, Mel. That was a lot of really interesting information to find out how many data points that they collect on every single human is kind of fascinating. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to talk about network vulnerability assessments, and this is going to switch gears a little bit from what Mel was talking about, but more inside your organization is how to protect that. So as you look at this iceberg, and a quick clarity up front, the labels you see here, basic MVA and advanced MVA, these are Medcurity service levels. So your MSP or another vendor might not use these exact names, which is exactly why this slide matters. So the top of the iceberg is the kind of MVA that I think most people think of or feel like they're getting when they get an MVA. It's going to be a surface level visibility. In our basic MVA, we focus on common vulnerabilities across your network, systems, and devices, and we include an external and internal vulnerability scan, plus a dark web scan, port scanning, and Active Directory scanning, then a complete report with practical risks, stratified guidance so you know what to tackle first. So in looking at just this part, these are the questions that you want to ask moving forward. And I'm going to go through those as I continue through the slide. A basic network vulnerability is a great, valuable work. It gives you a clear starting point and supports the technical safeguards and risk management efforts that are outlined in the HIPAA security rule. Now, the bottom of the iceberg is what we call our advanced NVA. Deep internal risk. This is where we go beyond the classic vulnerability scanning to look at things like comprehensive Active Directory and password audits, internal access and privilege escalation risks, Active Directory posture and exposure, plus group policy and misconfiguration review. And this is the key point. When someone says we ran a scan, you want to know which iceberg you're actually getting. Is it vulnerability scanning, or does it also include the identity and internal access risk? Now, along with network vulnerability testing, pen testing, because it always comes up at this point. A vulnerability assessment is designed to identify and prioritize weaknesses, and a penetration test is different. It's simulating real-world attacks by exploiting weaknesses and taking on the role of the attacker to prove that impact. The easiest way to think about this, an MBA helps you find and fix what's there, and a pen test helps you validate what could actually be done with it. That's why pen testing is usually the most effective after you've addressed the basic issues identified through an MBA, and why an MBA is often the best first step after an SRA or a security risk analysis. On this slide, I want to keep it simple. 4 questions that cut through the word scan and tell you exactly what you're getting. So the first question, where are you scanning? Ask, are we scanning external only, internal, or both? External is what the internet can see, and internal is everything inside your network and what an attacker can reach once they're inside. The next question, how much access does the scan have? Ask, is the internal scan credentialed, meaning authenticated with permission? Logging in with credentialed accounts with appropriate permissions tends to give more accurate, actionable findings, producing a clearer picture of what truly is missing, misconfigured, or out of date, instead of findings that are inconclusive or otherwise deficient. Are you assessing identity and internal access risk, or only the vulnerabilities? Ask if the Active Directory, the passwords, the misconfigurations, and privilege escalation risks are included, or if it is strictly vulnerability scanning. If they say yes, ask what their deliverables are going to look like. What are you going to get back, and what are your next steps? Ask, do we get a prioritized report that tells us what matters most? And very important, a list of all the devices that are impacted by that vulnerability. Also, do they have an easy process to delegate prioritized findings to team members as well as remediation tracking? And I am going to end on this slide. And what I want to end with is something that's both simple and really important: security and risk management. It's not a one and done project. It's always an ongoing process. The reason is covered entities are ultimately responsible for protecting PHI. That means confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So even if you have great partners, great vendors, and a great IT team, the responsibility to oversee what's happening with PHI still lands on your organization. And this is where it can feel a little unfair, But the reality is, healthcare organizations can be fined for not adequately overseeing business associates and making sure appropriate safeguards are in place, even when the issue didn't start with you. That's why vendor oversight matters, not because you don't trust people, but because the expectation is that you can demonstrate you're being responsible with PHI as well. The other reality is the OCR enforcement isn't only reactive anymore. We're seeing more activity that looks like audits and reviews that don't necessarily wait for a big breach headline to happen first. So the safest mindset is, what would we want to be able to show if someone asked you tomorrow, how are you managing risk? How are you tracking it? And how do you know safeguards are in place? And I'll add something I say a lot: breaches happen. It's not if, it's when. What separates organization is not perfection, it's readiness. It's having a plan, knowing your gaps, and showing consistent progress. That's why I don't want you to walk away thinking you need a massive, perfect program. Start with a simple plan and let it grow as your team learns. For example, you can start with a few basics. Do we know where PhD lives and who touches it? Internal teams and vendors. Do we have a current security risk analysis and a way to track the remediation? Are we checking our technical environment regularly, like vulnerability assessments, and then addressing the top priorities? And are we reviewing our key vendors at a high level so we can say, yes, we've done our due diligence? Then you build from there, quarter by quarter. Security is like fitness. The goal isn't one intense day at a gym, it's a repeatable routine you can actually keep up with. Sometimes the most helpful thing is simply having a partner who can translate security speak into a clear plan that you can manage. So the takeaway is this: you don't have to do everything at once, but you do want a program that keeps going, because protecting PHI is an ongoing responsibility, and consistent documented progress is the best way to reduce risk over time.
Thanks, Molly. That's good. Always good to keep in mind that it's ongoing. And same thing with any of the, like, privacy and with compliance, things are changing quickly. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You're just do your best and start. You got to start somewhere though. And here's a few of the resources I was kind of talking about during the other slides. There's this web choices tool and this ad choices tool. It's actually, you can opt out. There's out of each of these each of these websites, and then the National Do Not Call registry. If you go in there and you add yourself, your phone number and name, then basically you won't get as many of the scam calls that, or the telemarketers just blowing up your phones. And it's supposed to cut down on that. And then also if you click this link, it will take you to the FTC page where each of these credit bureaus are listed. And then that way you can go onto their websites and freeze your credit. It actually is really easy to do. And then once you do it, if you do end up, say, needing to take out a loan, or you want to open up a credit card or something, it only takes about an hour to unfreeze it, and you just go through the website. So this is it can significantly cut down on your risk of identity theft and fraud. And from what I've read, recommendations from a lot of cybersecurity experts, they actually say to also freeze if you have like teenagers or kids, like it's important to freeze theirs as well. And you're able to do that if they're minors, of course. And then one resource from a friend of mine who also, he works in cybersecurity and threat intelligence, was haveibeenpwned.com. You can enter in your various email addresses into it, and it will actually provide you with a list of if that email address has been leaked somewhere. And then that way you can know where, I guess, the risk is, but also make sure to change your password. And of course, everyone's risk picture or risk tolerance is different. So, what is practical for you isn't practical for someone else. But I think things like freezing your credit, that applies to everyone, and that really would cut down on your information being sold to just about everyone. So, all right, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll catch you next time.